Okay.
A Missouri man is shot in the head on a deserted country road. Is it murder? The only clue, a shredded bullet. Identifying the gun that fired it will be nearly impossible. In Florida, a man is beaten to death in his home. Police uncover fingerprints and rumors of an exotic weapon.
That's what it looks like.
For law enforcement, the toughest opponent is often an assassin with no clear ties to the victim. Using science as their most powerful weapon, investigators must find these hired killers and make them pay the true price of murder. In this episode, some of the names have been changed. Hillsborough, Missouri is a small town located a few miles west of the Mississippi River. On November 21st, 2000, on a stretch of commercial property owned by a chemical manufacturing plant just outside Hillsborough, a security guard spotted a vehicle sitting in a field. He discovered a man in the driver's seat, slumped over the steering wheel. The man was unresponsive. He was bleeding from a wound in the back of his head. The security guard called 911.
Jefferson County 911, what is your emergency? A man in a field?
A dispatcher alerted units from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department.
7214, 6017.
Within minutes, paramedics and deputies were on the scene. But for the man who lay motionless in the driver's seat, it was too late. Paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. Sheriff's deputies cordoned off the area and called in crime scene investigators. Detective William McDaniel took charge of the case.
When I pulled up, there was a car partially off a gravel roadway, had a white male slumped at the wheel. The rear passenger side window was shattered. It looked like from a bullet. The security guard found him.
Okay, I guess what we'll do then.
The evidence suggested to Detective Michael Gray the car was moving when the man was shot.
We can do it here.
When the vehicle was found, it was in gear. His foot was still on the brake pedal. We surmised that the vehicle was traveling at idle speed. We initially were looking at the possibility of it being hunting related simply because of the time of year. The area in question is known for a lot of hunting.
Detectives examined the car inside and out in search of any clues. Some 30 feet away on the dirt road, investigators found shards of glass. They believe the bullet struck the car and driver here, after which he drove straight off the road. The driver was removed from the vehicle and identified by his license. His name was Larry Hullman, a 44-year-old from nearby Hillsborough. The victim's wife was contacted. Detective McDaniel knew the victim from around town. He was a church-going family man, not a man prone to have many enemies.
Open up the right door.
He was also an avid hunter.
Yeah, I put him down the road.
The security guard revealed that the subject was in the field area scouting for deer for possible hunting locations. It's the last day of deer season, and there had been reports of poachers on the property. The car is in a field where the deer cross, so there's a chance that somebody may have thought it was a deer moving across the field.
Detectives turned to forensics to find the source of the deadly shot.
Well, the important thing was to try to determine the direction the projectile came from. Once we got a direction, we'd have a line on where to search for any items of forensic evidence, any shell casings, items left behind. That's why it was important to try to position everything back in its original location. We repositioned the vehicle back on the road. We figured out a trajectory angle based upon the approximate head height of the gentleman. It was a matter of setting up a tripod, taking a trajectory string, and then just extrapolating back into the wooded area.
Hullman had been shot from behind, the bullet passing through the window and the car's headrest before killing him.
Okay, that's good.
Police used this information to reconstruct the bullet's path.
We ran the trajectory angle back from the vehicle at about 40 to 50 feet away near the wood line. The trajectory string was at about shoulder height, which would be consistent with an individual taking aim or firing with a weapon.
I like that. What do you think?
Be right real close.
Investigators scoured the woods in that area, looking for potential evidence left by a careless hunter. But police came up empty-handed. No shell casings, cigarette butts, or any clues to help explain what happened. A sheriff's deputy interviewed the security guard at the entrance to the property. He was the last person to see Larry Hullman alive. Police hoped the guard might recall some small clue to help them find the killer.
Okay.
The guard had known the victim. Larry had worked there and hunted on the property often. On the day of his death, Larry Hullman arrived alone and in good spirits. It was his day off work, and he told the guard he would be out in the field scouting for deer. According to a sign-in sheet,
Yes, sir, it is.
Hullman had entered the property at 4:20 in the afternoon.
Holman there. Yes, sir.
He would never sign out.
Correct. Mrs. Holman?
Yes.
Police spoke with the victim's wife, Tammy, to see if she could shed any additional light on the investigation.
I need to speak to you about your husband.
I don't understand.
She said she had last seen him the morning he was killed. The couple had been married nearly 15 years.
Okay.
She described her marriage as happy and could think of no one who wished Larry harm. She wasn't able to provide any additional information.
He was shot down at his place.
An autopsy was performed, though it offered few clues that could point to a perpetrator. According to the coroner's report, Larry Hullman died instantly. A high-velocity slug was retrieved from his skull, but it was unidentifiable. The bullet's lead core was gone. Only a mangled copper jacket survived.
Okay.
Investigators hope to recover more pieces of the bullet in the victim's car.
See if we can preserve that.
The projectile, it had fragmented when it penetrated the glass. When we processed the vehicle, we found some fragments from the projectile embedded in the headrest of the driver's seat. So we decided to retrieve that in the attempt to try to determine the caliber of the weapon and maybe the ammunition that was used.
At the Missouri State Highway Patrol Crime Lab, forensics expert Todd Garrison was charged with putting the bullet back together again.
First, it hit a window of an automobile. Secondary impact was the headrest of the automobile. The third impact was the victim's head. Each one of those impacts contributing a little bit more to its damage and distortion.
Garrison analyzed the size and weight of the pieces.
One of the copper fragments out of the headrest had rifling engraving on it that was similar to the rifling engraving that was observed on the bullet out of the victim's head.
He determined that he was looking at pieces of a .243 caliber bullet.
Generally, the .243 Winchester caliber is associated with a hunting type rifle, as for deer, large game.
At the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, detectives formed a task force. If this was a hunting accident, it would be nearly impossible to solve.
You guys watch.
Thousands of hunters passed through the area.
30, 40 feet up.
Detective Gray laid out what little they did know.
Okay, so you're saying about
You have an individual who's what we term low risk. The guy's a family man. The guy had no known enemies. Did not live a lifestyle that would be conducive to violence.
Investigators, however, were not yet willing to declare the case an
I think
accident.
I'm going to take the four names like the wood line,
Something didn't seem right.
glass, which we are.
Accidental shots usually end up somewhere else on the body. Headshots are usually an aimed shot. When you start thinking about the laws of probability, we have a moving target, small rear window, the thickness of the woods. It did not look like an accident.
I think we need to go out and maybe talk to some residents.
Police officially labeled the death suspicious, but they had no leads to point them to the killer.
Go back out to the woods.
It seemed the investigators had come to the end of their trail of evidence. Weeks turned into months, and no new clues surfaced. Police issued press releases throughout the small community, asking the public for help. By January, little headway had been made on the case. Then, police got a break from an unlikely source.
Hi, Detective. Okay.
Tammy Hullman, the victim's widow, told investigators about a series of unsettling letters she had been receiving.
Yes, I did. It's weird.
After her husband was shot, a man named Carter Davis began writing her love letters.
You know, it's just kind of fishy.
Tammy said she had rebuffed him, but he would not leave her alone. She turned his letters over to police. "I love you and won't let you go," read one. "We're soulmates," read another. The detective's interview with Holman's widow left them with some questions.
Wouldn't say who he was.
No, he wouldn't say who he was.
They knew that a man named Alan Tripp had moved in with her shortly after her husband was killed.
Check on this.
Mrs. Holman started to look suspicious to us. Her actions didn't really correspond with a grieving widow. It began to expand our investigation.
Detectives ran Tammy's name through the system. Her record was clean. But they also knew her name did appear on another significant document. Larry Hullman's insurance policy offered a payout of $125,000. He had an additional policy of $2 million if he died in a hunting accident. The beneficiary was his wife. For detectives, what started as a simple accident was now looking like it might be cold-blooded murder. In November 2000, Missouri deer hunter Larry Hullman was found dead in a field. He'd been shot in the head with a .243 caliber bullet fired from a hunting rifle. At first, it appeared as if it was an accident, but police were beginning to have their doubts.
Here at the scene.
They weren't the only ones. In January 2001, the victim's brother, Randy Hullman, turned in a .243 Winchester bolt-action rifle. He knew the police were looking for that type of weapon and suspected Larry's death was no accident. Randy feared the killer was someone his brother knew who may have used this gun to murder him.
If you want to have a seat right there.
Jefferson County Detective William McDaniel.
We interviewed Randy Hullman, brother of Larry Hullman. He actually brought in a deer rifle of Larry's, and he wanted us to do a comparison of the deer rifle to the ballistic round, what was found at the crime scene.
At the time of the murder, the gun had been stored at the home of Larry and Tammy Hullman.
I ended up getting it from Tammy.
Randy had good reason to suspect his brother was murdered.
Yeah, you said you had
He
that
told
person.
police his brother Larry had been shot at before.
We were at my parents' place.
Days before his death, Larry had gone hunting deep in the Missouri woods.
Randy stated that he and Larry had had a conversation later in the night after hunting. Larry stated that he had a close call. And Randy asked, well, what do you mean by a close call? And he goes, well, I had a bullet whiz by my head. Because there was so much gun activity up in the northern part of Missouri during deer season. And they kind of joked about it.
But now he knew it was no joke and wondered if Larry had been shot with his own gun.
Heavily hunted. I didn't think much about it.
He just wished that that gun would be ruled out so that way he knew the gun had no involvement into his brother's death.
Alan, thanks for coming by.
Yes.
Investigators sent the gun to ballistics and began interviewing suspects. First on their list was Alan Tripp, the widow's new love interest.
You know what we want to talk to you about?
Tripp had grown up with Tammy Hullman and came to her side shortly after Larry's death.
Oh, I've known her since grade school. We went to grade school together.
Within the last couple months, Alan Tripp had moved in with Mrs. Hullman and actually gave her an engagement ring.
No.
His actions raised some red flags with us. He stated he had no knowledge of the incident, that he had spoke to Mrs. Hullman several times about the so-called accident, and she stated that there was nothing there.
Calling her all the time.
Investigators also sought out a local man named Carter Davis.
Yeah, he's right over there clearing that table.
Tammy said Davis had become infatuated with her, showering her with flowers and love letters.
I need to ask you some questions about
Letters that concerned Tammy Hullman. Like Tripp, he insisted he had nothing to do with the crime.
Tammy and I are friends.
At one time, Carter Davis actually put a note on Alan Tripp's car which said, "Did you kill him?"
She's always said from the
And
beginning.
he just believed that Alan Tripp had something to do with his death.
But other than that, she's never said much.
Police had also gotten a very interesting lead. They learned that Tripp and Davis were not the only men close to Tammy Hullman.
We received an anonymous phone call. It was a male subject.
The caller suggested they check out the alibi of a third man.
It was a mail caller?
The tipster said Charles Miller had a gun similar to the one police were looking for. McDaniel checked Miller's record for any previous arrests. Miller had a record. He had been arrested for check fraud. A few days later, on January 9th, 2001, investigators caught another break.
Okay, thank you. Have a seat.
Nice to meet you.
A woman gave police new information on the case.
Some information I don't know if you can use.
She told Detective McDaniel that she lived near the field where Hullman was shot. For several days leading up to the crime, she observed a suspicious-looking man with a gun walking near the crime scene. McDaniel showed the woman a lineup.
Recognize anyone?
She identified Charles Miller without hesitation.
Yeah, right there, I'm sure.
Within hours, they had their man in sight.
Miller!
Charles Miller was arrested and brought in for questioning. He admitted he was a friend of the Hullmans, but claimed to know nothing of the crime.
He's good.
They had attended Sunday schools together. Miller would come over and do work around the Hullman's house. He would bring eggs, he would bring, bacon, and so Tammy would cook breakfast in the morning for him and Larry.
Miller offered to cooperate with investigators.
Mr. Miller gave us permission to do a consent to search on firearms that he had owned. We were only looking for high-powered rifles, and he actually gave us 3 rifles, one being a Browning Bolt A-Action 243.
Deputies also seized boxes of .243 caliber ammunition and cell phone records, which indicated that Miller had called the Hullman residence on the day of the crime.
Once the gun was seized from Charlie Miller during the consent to search, it was delivered to the Missouri State Highway Patrol Crime Lab in Jeff City for a ballistics match.
Criminalist Todd Garrison examined Miller's rifle, as well as Larry Hullman's gun brought in by his brother Randy.
I test fired both of the rifles in question. From those, I obtained bullets, which I could do microscopic comparisons between. I eliminated the .243 Winchester caliber Savage rifle.
The rifle taken from the victim's home was not involved. That left Charles Miller's gun. There were key similarities, but damage to the bullet recovered from the body prevented a 100% match.
I did observe the rifling engraving and also isolated agreements of some individual characteristics. Not enough to say, yes, this firearm did fire this bullet, but enough that it was consistent with that particular firearm.
The forensics seemed to point squarely at Charles Miller. He was now their prime suspect. Miller, already in custody, was interrogated by Detective McDaniel.
Is there something that we need to talk about? He was not a very emotional person. He asked us questions if this was about his gun. We explained to him, yes, it was about his gun we seized. And he bowed his head and he looked back up and he said, I killed him.
I killed him.
It took us all for a shock. And we find out later, Mr. Miller was a very church-going person, and I believe this was eating him up inside.
You know what kind of
Police now had a confession, but what Miller was about to tell them would blow the case wide open.
Who owns a .243?
In Jefferson County, Missouri, an accident investigation had uncovered a homicide. Police had a suspect in custody, Charles Miller.
Charlie, you know why we're here?
And when presented with the forensic evidence, he confessed.
Rifle.
But the confession was only the beginning.
You might be able to help me with.
Charles Miller got, I guess, infatuated with Mrs. Hullman. He stated to us that he always thought she was a very well-kept woman. He and Mrs. Hullman began a relationship without Mr. Hullman's knowledge.
Miller told police he and Tammy were close, and her husband was becoming concerned.
I thought Tammy knew that you killed
He went on to say Tammy asked him to kill Larry.
Tammy's the one who made
She wanted it done during hunting season to make it appear as if it was an accident.
Who owns it?
Miller believed that with Larry dead, he and Tammy would be free to live the life he dreamed of.
Tammy, well, I still have the gun.
Miller had tried once and missed. November 21st was his last chance, the final day of hunting season.
Mr. Miller got down to the property about 2 o'clock and actually watched Mr. Hullman drive into the field. Miller was up the road a ways and positioned against a tree. And as Mr. Hullman started to leave the property, he took the shot. And he watched Mr. Hullman slump, his head go forward and rest on the steering wheel, and the car veered off.
Police believe he then packed up his rifle, picked up his shell casings, and left the scene. It was then that he made the call to Tammy Hullman.
He told her to set one less place at the dinner table.
On January 10, 2001, detectives arrested Tammy Hullman for the murder of her husband.
Tammy?
What?
Charlie Miller was basically double-crossed by Mrs. Hullman. He thought he was going to get to live the life that Larry Hullman lived, and instead she pulls Alan Tripp in, who is now taking over Larry's position in the family. She was a black widow, and she had all these lovers out there, and she kind of used them all to do her dirty work for her.
Charles Miller pled guilty to second-degree murder and is serving a 25-year prison sentence. Tammy Hullman was sentenced to 7 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. A sniper's bullet will often give him away, but a hitman who uses a more obscure weapon poses an added challenge for police. November 7th, 1995, 8:31 p.m. A 911 dispatcher received a frantic call from a woman in Greencull Springs, Florida.
We'll get somebody out there, okay?
The caller, Linda Jones, reported that 3 men had broken in and ransacked her home. Jones said that she had been tied up, her husband severely beaten. Deputies from the Clay County Sheriff's Department rushed to the address. On the lookout for 3 intruders, they approached the home with caution.
I'm so glad you guys are here.
I need you to come back over this way.
I want to be in here with my husband.
I just need for you to wait for me. Tell me what's going on.
A deputy secured the living room. The assailants appeared to have fled. Linda's husband, Jack Jones, lay on the floor in a puddle of blood, his hands and feet bound with duct tape. He was not breathing. The deputy began CPR. Distraught and inconsolable, his wife could offer few lucid details. Paramedics rushed onto the scene. As deputies tried to gain a description of the attackers, they did not have much to go on. Linda said the men wore ski masks. The rest was a blur. Lieutenant Tom Waugh was assigned the case.
We were told that 3 masked assailants entered the residence. They had some kind of a club or bat with them, and they had tied her up, tied up her husband, and literally beat him with this weapon. And then they went through the residence and stole various items, such as money and jewelry.
Paramedics examined Linda Jones. Her injuries seemed minor. She complained of tingling and pain in her left arm and was taken to a local hospital for treatment. Her husband was not as fortunate. Jack Jones was dead.
The crime scene itself was very violent.
We noticed right off the bat a lot of blood. There was blood on the floor, because there was blood spatter on the wall, and it appears that he was drugged into an adjacent room. And on the wall, as he rounded the corner, it looked as if he had his hands on the door corner trying to hold himself back. And then once he was in the other room, that is where he was literally beaten to death.
Pieces of duct tape were scattered throughout the house, along with a partially used roll. Officials believed it had likely been used on the wife. She too had been tied up, she told deputies, but tore herself free before calling police. The reason for the break-in appeared less clear the more detectives looked around. Valuables were found in plain view.
It was made to look like it was ransacked, you know, just disheveled.
Jewelry, an expensive watch, a man's wallet with cash and credit cards were all left behind.
Dope that all over the floor by the closet.
Those are the things that you can turn the fastest. They would have been gone. And why would you leave money? Why would you leave jewelry? Didn't seem right.
At the hospital, deputies took a statement from Linda Jones
Jack and I were sitting in the living room.
and fingerprints to help eliminate those found at the house.
Right shoulder, huh?
She claimed her wrists were tied and her mouth sealed shut with duct tape. But something about her story didn't sit right with detectives.
They threw me against the fire.
You would have some signs of that. There wasn't any redness on her mouth or her face. That didn't seem quite right, because normally duct tape will leave a residue, or they'll leave a redness when you snatch that thing off.
Police were left with many questions. An autopsy provided few answers. The coroner's report revealed broken ribs, skull fractures, and severe contusions from the knees to the top of his head. Lieutenant Jim Redmond recalls the official findings.
The injuries to Jack Jones were as a result of blunt force trauma. The injuries were indicative of a bat or some type of club.
The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves throughout the community. Detectives were baffled.
The Joneses lived in a nice neighborhood in the Lake Asbury area of Clay County. Why did somebody pick out this house? In this affluent neighborhood, quiet, peaceful, very peaceful, quiet neighborhood. Why did they just pick this house out at random to come in and commit this crime? It just wasn't right.
Come on, Linda.
Investigators hoped Jones's widow might shed some light on the case.
About what happened.
Her response, however, surprised them.
Linda felt a need to have an attorney right away and indicated that we couldn't contact her.
Her behavior, though legal, seemed odd.
Why would she get an attorney? You know, why would a victim whose husband was murdered, why would she need an attorney?
Investigators began canvassing the neighborhood. They hoped someone might have seen something that would pinpoint the killer.
We learned of Jack and Linda's relationship from various people, and it was a stormy relationship. Supposedly, they just weren't happy.
According to neighbors, Jack Jones was having an affair, and Linda had discovered it. One neighbor noticed a suspicious vehicle parked outside the Joneses' residence at the time of the murder.
It was a maroon van, and it had dark tinted windows. And it left the scene, high rate of speed, no lights on.
In nearby Jacksonville, police tracked down Samantha Thomas, the girlfriend of Jack Jones. The two had been romantically involved for several months. The young woman claimed that Jack was planning to divorce his wife. But Linda had threatened suicide. The girlfriend also told police of another incident 1 week before the murder. On October 31st, outside her home, Thomas's car was vandalized, the tires slashed. It could have been just a Halloween prank. But according to his girlfriend, Jack Jones felt differently.
Jack felt like Linda was behind it just due to all the ruckus she was raising about Samantha and his relationship.
The story seemed a bit odd, but Waugh's next find only increased his suspicions. According to their insurance policy, Linda Jones would receive $500,000 in the event of her husband's death. It was a compelling motive, but to prove murder, investigators would have to turn to the evidence. Though Linda Jones maintained her silence, the duct tape spoke volumes. Dawn Walters, a crime analyst with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, examined scraps of tape collected by police at the crime scene. Minute details grabbed her attention.
Some of the duct tape that was submitted was pulled apart or torn apart, and some of the duct tape that was submitted appeared to have been cut.
Duct tape found on the victim was stretched and frayed, signs that the man had struggled to break free. Tape wrapped around the wrists of his wife, however, bore a tiny triangular pattern.
The duct tape was determined to have been cut by what appeared to be pinking shears or another similar cutting instrument.
Walters also looked for fingerprints, but none were visible. At least, not to the naked eye.
I decided to use the cyanoacrylate ester fuming process, otherwise known as the superglue process. The superglue fuming process is done by adding superglue drops to sodium hydroxide soaked cotton, which then begins to fume, and these fumes will adhere to the latent print residue that's present on an item. Then I used white fingerprint powder to further enhance the prints.
Within seconds, an image came into view. Linda Jones had not torn the duct tape from her wrists. And now police had not one, but 2 fingerprints to prove it. Someone had cut her free on the night of the murder. In 1995, Florida police were on the hunt for 3 masked intruders who bludgeoned a man in his home. After weeks of investigation, Lieutenant Tom Waugh had just 2 significant clues. A pair of fingerprints left at the scene, and a mysterious maroon van. The van remained unidentified. The fingerprints matched no one on file. According to information gathered by police, the victim was a used car salesman with no known enemies and a marriage on the rocks. Waugh suspected the victim's wife was involved, but she could not have acted alone.
Not too far into this investigation after the death of Jack Jones, I had felt like that this was going to be a murder for hire.
Police then got a tip that confirmed their suspicions.
Camera, there was a diamond ring.
An anonymous source accused a local man of being involved in the crime. He was a landscaper named Donald Bradley. Police took a closer look at him.
We determined that Donald Bradley owned a maroon van with dark tinted windows.
The description of the van matched the one police were looking for. A review of his landscaping business finances led to the accounting office in Jacksonville, where Linda Jones worked.
Linda Jones did Donald Bradley's taxes and did work for him. She knew him, and boom, right away, he was coming into focus in this case. One of the things I do routinely when somebody is identified as a suspect, I would start finding out who are they calling.
In Donald Bradley's case, it was not only who, but when.
This is the night of the murder. I got Donald Bradley's cell phone.
Cell phone records indicated he'd made 3 calls to the Jones house on November 7th, all around the time the crime occurred. On January 22nd, 1996, Lieutenants Tom Waugh and Jim Redmond interviewed their suspect at his home in Orange Park, Florida.
Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Jim Redmond.
Bradley admitted he knew the Joneses, but said he had no knowledge of the crime. He told police he'd been out driving for part of the evening in question.
What was the last 4?
When we talked with him that day, he was very arrogant.
Detectives soon revealed their hand.
Okay, well, we got a 911 call When we started telling him about the phone calls to the house, he said, yes, it was concerning taxes. And then he was very, very nervous, and you could tell he kind of didn't know where to go but hold his composure. I would ask him, Donald, how could Linda be talking about taxes with you on the telephone when she's duct taped and her husband's being beat to death and some guy's sitting on her in the living room of their house? I mean, how could this happen? And he couldn't answer that.
For Lieutenant Redmond, Donald Bradley's story was unbelievable.
We felt pretty confident at that point that he was somehow involved with the murder of Jack Jones.
All the detectives had was a hunch. To make an arrest, they needed evidence. They got a search warrant to seize Bradley's van. Blood, hair, carpet fibers. Investigators searched for anything that might link Donald Bradley to the killing of Jack Jones. But the van was spotless. It had been scrubbed clean. Detectives caught a break several weeks later when Bradley was arrested on an unrelated charge. They interrogated the suspect, who changed his story slightly. He admitted Linda Jones had approached him to kill her husband. But he claimed he had refused.
Bradley made up a story about Linda having murdered Jack Jones and used this African war club to do it with.
His story seemed implausible. But with his fingerprints now in the system, they could finally compare his prints to those found on the duct tape. For investigators, it was one step forward, 2 steps back. Bradley's prints did not match, which meant at least one more accomplice was still on the loose. In 1995, Florida officials believed that Linda Jones had hired a local landscaper named Donald Bradley to kill her husband. But an unidentified fingerprint indicated that at least one other man had taken part in the crime. In September 1996, Jeremy Harrison, a longtime employee of Bradley's landscaping business, had been picked up on an unrelated charge. Police wanted to talk with him about the Jones murder. Prosecutor Timothy Collins.
Mrs. Jones' initial report at the time of the homicide was that 3 individuals were involved. I think what you generally find in these kind of cases is that in every lie there's a thread of truth. So in looking at the crime scene, it was pretty clear that more than one person was involved.
Man, a long time.
It was then a matter of trying to determine who and how many other people were with him.
All right, 15 years.
Would you stand up for me?
So the critical decision then was to find that fingerprint, who it belonged to.
Fingerprint specialist Dawn Walters received Harrison's ink print to compare with evidence on file.
To compare latent prints, I look for the individual characteristics that are present in the latent print and the inked print. Characteristics such as dots and ending ridges and bifurcations. I was able to identify the 2 latent fingerprints on the tape.
The prints belonged to Jeremy Harrison. Finally, they had their proof. They presented what they had found to Harrison. He started to talk.
He had no problems in telling us that he was involved in the murder and that Bradley was involved in the murder. But there was a third person, and he wouldn't discuss who that third person was, and he was holding back for a reason.
Harrison wouldn't point his finger at the third suspect. It seemed the investigator had hit another brick wall. Then they learned of a family connection that seemed likely to provide them with the break they so desperately needed.
It was shortly thereafter that we learned of his brother.
Jonathan Harrison was picked up for questioning.
We left the door open in the interview room, and we let his brother walk by. And his brother looked at him and said, "I told him everything, give it up, bro."
After eluding suspicion for nearly a year, both Jeremy and Jonathan Harrison confessed. According to the Harrison brothers, the weapon used on the night of the crime was an ancient Zulu warrior stick.
Yeah, I think
the artifact had been stolen from a local man who hunted big game in Africa. The hunter provided a full description of the club, but it was never recovered by police. On September 14, 1996, law enforcement officials arrested Donald Bradley and charged him with murder and conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. That same day, investigators closed in on Linda Jones. A woman betrayed by an unfaithful spouse and her own unrestrained brutality.
Linda Jones wanted her husband back. When she finally came to the conclusion that that was never going to happen, then it became a matter of money.
Will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to have an attorney present.
And I guess in her own mind, she felt like she was not going to get the kind of money she desired from a divorce.
Investigators pieced together the events that led to Jack Jones's murder.
According to the brothers, Donald had contacted him. He said he would pay him $100 apiece to go beat this guy up, and that's what they thought they were going to do.
Donald Bradley had other plans. After calling Linda Jones several times that evening, making sure their victim was in place, the Harrison brothers burst through the front door, which Linda had left unlocked. Bradley attacked from a side entrance. Bradley grabbed the Zulu warrior stick and proceeded to bludgeon the man in a ruthless fury. Linda's wrists were taped and then cut free, and the men disappeared into the night. Later that evening, the men destroyed all evidence, burning the ski masks, their bloody clothes, and the Zulu Warrior Club. Jeremy and Jonathan Harrison pled guilty to felony third-degree murder. They were sentenced to 10 years, 6 months. A jury found Donald Bradley guilty of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and burglary with a firearm. He was sentenced to die in the electric chair. Linda Jones was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In a murder for hire, police must not only ID a killer, but the guilty party who concocted the crime. Life insurance, cell phone calls, and suspect behavior provide guideposts for police. But it's often the tiniest evidence that speaks the loudest, and a microscope that shows who must pay the price of murder.